Welcome back, Nerglings. Today we are taking a look at my invincible Khorne army. But before we start, be sure to like, share and subscribe so you don't miss an update. I have slaughtered armies of elves, broken the backs of dragons and eaten the hearts of leviathans. Arbel, the undefeated, the destroyer of Khorne, was an ancient and powerful champion of chaos, who wrought many woes upon the world during the time of the Great War. It is said that he still lives to this very day, a chaos champion who has remained undefeated for centuries. Countless thousands have fallen beneath his axe, and now their white skulls lie at the feet of Khorne's mighty throne, surrounded by rivers of blood and fire. Arbel was ever the favourite of his master and his most devoted servant. Khorne gifted him with the power of the Destroyer, a reward that belongs to Khorne's own champion alone. A relentless fury of destruction and bloodletting descended upon Arbel whenever he waded through his foes in battle. No one had ever been able to withstand him. And blessed was he with the wrath of Khorne, which made him nearly unstoppable in close combat, a juggernaut of rage and wrath. He was thus ever aware of the eyes of Khorne upon him, knowing that should he ever fail his master, a terrible price would be paid. Thus is the punishment for failure in the eyes of the gods. Arbel always rode to battle on a horrifically mutated demonic mount, the largest and most powerful flesh hound of Khorne. Its feet would morph into hands, its hide was as hard as carapace, and its head was that of a foul demon. The Destroyer would fight in the Great War, leading many hordes to victory in the name of chaos. At the Northland city of Prague, Arbel led 100 demons in the assault on its boundaries. The gates stood firm at first, the walls stood strong, the defenders desperate but quietly confident. No one had breached their fortress city before. Boiling oil and roiling flame poured upon the demons, desperately scraping at the stone walls to reach their foes. Just as the defenders thought that they might survive the attack, Arbel strode forward, his blood, rust and filth-encrusted armour protecting him from the worst of the defenders' attacks. At the gate, he lifted his powerful axe up high, bringing it down with terrible force. The gate splintered, its metals cracked, the magical protections cast into it devoured, as Khorne's mightiest champion broke the gates of the city. The slaughter that ensued would be struck from the records of the Empire, never to be spoken of by mere men again. He would survive the final great battle of Kislev, which saw the death of many of the Dark God's greatest followers, such as Valnir the Reaper and even the ever-chosen of the day, Asavar Kul. Arbel participated in the end times, acting as the mightiest of Archaon's mortal followers. When he was instructed to defeat the elven armies of Caradryan, all believed he would stand triumphant, even against the living incarnate of fire. In the ensuing battle, his mighty axe reeked of hot blood, leaving trails of crimson smoke behind as he slaughtered his way through rank upon rank of Ulthuan's finest. Khorne's greatest follower would finally be defeated, however, slain during a fierce duel against the incarnate in which he could have won, had his arrogance and hubris not betrayed him. Now, of course, the Age of Sigmar is not canon in the world of Oldhammer, so let us omit this failure and move on. In the year -830 IC, Arbel the Undefeated, filled with hubris at his own feats of martial prowess, left the battlefields of the old world in search of his greatest challenge, Khorne himself. And this is where our story begins. Fill the moat with the corpses of your comrades, trample on their broken carcasses to reach the ramparts, bring down the walls with the weight of the dead. Khorne, also most widely known as the Blood God, is the major chaos god of war, hatred, wrath, rage, murder, blood, strength, courage, and martial honour. Khorne is the second eldest of the major ruinous powers, and his waxing strength in this time of constant conflict often renders him the mightiest of the chaos gods in his effect on the mortal world and in the great game between the gods. His domain encompasses the most basic and brutal of sentient emotions, those of hate, anger, rage, the desire for destruction, and the joy of killing one's enemies. Every act of killing or murder in the mortal world feeds and empowers Khorne. The more senseless, vicious, and bloodthirsty, the better. However, though Khorne is the god of bloody slaughter, he is also the god of martial pride and honour, of those who set themselves against the most dangerous foes and earn victory against the odds. His warriors, though gore-maddened berserkers, take no artful approach to killing, for such indulgent displays serve only to empower Slaanesh, the honourless adversary of Khorne amongst the company of the Chaos Gods. Deep in the Chaos Wastes, Khorne's name is called in no hushed tones. Warriors who are zealous enough in battle may earn his favour, and those who know not his name instead use a plethora of different monikers. He is variously called the Lord of Murder, the Lord of Skulls, the Hunter of Souls, and the Hound in Norsca. In smaller regions, his name is bastardized by uncouth tongues into Karneth, Akar, Kajor, Korgar, Axefather, Bloodfather, Wolffather, Bloodwolf, and yet other uncounted multitudes of titles and aspects. He is worshipped by almost every tribe of men in the northern wastes, for the Northmen are warrior peoples who exult in the contest of arms, particularly those of Norsca, who most eagerly embrace Khorne's call to eternal warfare. A man that has put his faith in Khorne, however, is just as likely to be a blood-crazed killer as he is an honourable warrior, and often will be both at the same time. Khorne, like all the Chaos Gods, has two sides, for he is the embodiment of martial honour and courage, said to smile upon all feats of valour, strength, and blood-drenched warrior skill. Yet Khorne is also the divine patron of proud warriors who set themselves against the odds and emerge triumphant through the display of savagery, murderous wrath, and unending bloodlust. In this, he is a dual aspect, on one hand savage and bloodthirsty, yet at the same time proud and honourable. This being said, no innocence shall be spared come the time of reckoning, as all skulls will eventually lay at the foot of his brass throne. Khorne is said to exalt the brave of both sides of a battle, while at the same time laying his terrible vengeance upon the cowardly and craven. According to the warrior code of his devotees, it is the solemn right of every warrior to die an honourable death in battle with sword in hand. You will find no goblin, kobold or skaven in the service of Khorne, for they are cowardly creatures, instead relying on treachery and scheming to vanquish their foes. It is not uncommon to see Khornate chaos warriors and champions of Khorne fighting amongst themselves, duelling to the death to prove their skill in combat and rise higher in the eyes of their patron. Khorne ultimately cares not from where the blood flows and the skulls are taken, only that such acts are done in his name. Only bloodletting through physical combat is acceptable, however, for Khorne disdains the use of all magic. None of his followers are permitted to be sorcerers, although some will carry magic-imbued weapons or armour to augment their own natural physical abilities. All of Khorne's demons are built to kill quickly and efficiently. While the troops of the other ruinous powers may fall back to recover or bring other talents into play, the demons of Khorne always fight to the death, cursing their enemies to damnation as they carve through them. Khorne's demons continue to spill blood until the last roar of defiance and rage from their gaping maws has been silenced. Then their bodies, further sacrifices to the Lord they served so faithfully, are crushed to dust and ash by the next wave of his blood-crazed troops. No mortal would be able to lay their eyes upon Khorne and survive, but various heretical writers have suggested that the blood god looks somewhat like one of his mighty bloodthirster greater demons, only infinitely more terrifying. His eyes burning with endless fury in the centre of his dog-like face. He is encased in his brass plate armour, capable of deflecting any blow, and clutches his colossal sword that could carve continents in half with a single stroke. Khorne's domain in the realm of chaos is said to have mighty forges and armories that run for leagues, belching sooty filth into the lightning-cracked air. Yet he will forever favour a single combination of arms. 1 billion souls tire endlessly in forging armour and great weapons to be gifted to his most exalted champions. Indeed, with this imagery in mind, you might find that Chaos Dwarfs would be entirely suited to this type of existence. There are whisperings that Hashat, like Cain, is in fact a minor aspect of Khorne, something we won't delve into here, but could be worth investigation in the future. Khorne's mighty throne room, built at the very top of his great brass citadel, is supported by 8 gigantic brass pillars in honour of his sacred number. The expansive floor roils with the bodies of battling bloodletters, hounds, and all manner of accursed spawn. In the centre of this endless carnage, Khorne sits resplendent in his rage upon his brass throne, resting atop a mountain of bloody skulls, built from the countless heads of great champions his followers have slain over an immeasurable number of eons. The tower itself rises leagues into the blackened sky, surrounded by a moat of blood, molten rock and flame, filled with the screaming enemies of Khorne, whilst the blackened brass walls are covered with monstrous carvings that depict the endless rage of the occupant within. Khorne is the least subtle of the Chaos Gods. He puts none of his will into any endeavour that does not cause bloodshed. His lands in the realm of chaos are barren, cracked and dry, save for the ceaseless rivers of blood, fueled by the endless combat that occurs on them. Throughout his domain, legions of warriors fling themselves into combat purely for the sake and glory of battle. Some in the old world may turn to the service of the ruinous powers to see their ambitions fulfilled. Examples of those drawn to Khorne include the militia man who simply dreams of having the strength to repel his foes and see his wife and children again, or the aging knight who wishes to once more have the strength of his youth course through his veins. At the same time, many despair at their fate, and, whilst Khorne finds this pathetic, he may still bestow blessings upon these wretched souls. Sometimes there is no better servant than one who is picked up at the lowest ebb and given their wish. The hearts of this kind of mortal often burn most fiercely for Khorne, revering in the gifts to overcome one's foes and the arrogance that is immediately bestowed by it. The majority of the servants of Khorne come willingly, others are slowly drawn in. There is a fine line between justice and vengeance. In seeking revenge, many people cannot control the nihilism and anger within themselves, which spills over into a fury that cannot be purged from their body. This leads them into direct exposure to the principles Khorne espouses, and, far too often, wrath and rage so consume them that, inevitably, the blood god then claims their very soul. For Khorne's will to be imposed across the empire, he first requires anarchy. If the established order of Emperor Karl Franz, the Grand Theogenist, and the Holy Temple of Sigmar has been overthrown, the old world will be critically and permanently weakened. More and more it appears as if the Eldar races of the dwarfs, elves and Slann no longer have the numbers to withhold the advances of chaos, without relying on the relatively undeveloped but far more numerous humans. Anarchy itself gives special pleasure to Khorne in comparison to his rival chaos gods, because in times of anarchy there is inevitably conflict, and when there is such widespread bloodshed, it is also inevitable that skulls shall be lifted into the air by screaming warriors offering their sacrifice to the blood god. Khorne loves to see mindless destruction and violence. The looting, decay and devastation that come with the fall of organised society all feed his lust for wanton destruction. Khorne is not in any way associated with subterfuge, quite the opposite, but from his brass citadel in the realm of chaos, the will that he imposes upon his followers has been confused by many a mortal. In the heat of a raging battle, warriors call upon their gods for strength, but it may not always be the guiding hand of Ulrich or Sigmar that answers the mortal men who petition the deities, but the blood god. Equally, chaos cultists of Khorne can occasionally show a modicum of patience and foresight compared to their patron. Throughout the empire, Khornate cults such as the Crimson Skull, the Flayed Blood, and the Wrath of Khorne scheme and plan. But they are mere mortals, and mortals will always scheme, regardless of their patron god. These sects secretly corrupt the minds and souls of imperial warriors until they have become mindless minions of Khorne dedicated to slaughter. Often soft-minded warriors are their target, lured into a group they initially believe worships more palatable deities of war such as Sigmar or Ulrich. Those unlucky enough to have set eyes upon his demons will no doubt suffer nightmares until their dying day, and know that their very survival was a miracle, even if the mental scars remain. Those that have faced his mortal warriors in battle know of the frenzy, the bloodlust, and the almighty strength that fuels them to carry on, even after receiving what would be a mortal wound. The stories of these battles inspire fear in the citizens of the cities, towns, and villages across the Empire. Whole battalions of elite troops have been known to turn tail and attempt to escape from his demonic hordes. But this inevitably leads to their slaughter. Sometimes this fear can even attract followers to the blood god's cause. Some can no longer see the influence of Sigmar, Tal, Shalya, Raya, or any of the other imperial gods upon the land, but they have witnessed the ravening power of the Chaos gods. Thus, believing that the world as they know it must be nearing its end, this kind of person seeks to worship Chaos in an attempt to save their soul, when that inevitable end finally arrives. Whilst there is a certain logic in this shallow worship of the God that will listen, it is misguided, as Khorne cares not who worships him, only that they spill blood in his name. Khorne's indifference to his mortal servants does, however, mean that he is always in need of new champions. There is a dual purpose in this need. When a warrior falls, a new one is needed to step into the breach, to take his predecessor's place so that Khorne can gain the upper hand in his struggle in the great game against the other ruinous powers. Secondly, the introduction of new blood can be used to test his existing champions. If new and old Khornate warriors meet in a challenge, then Khorne can only benefit. If the existing champion emerges victorious, then this warrior will have learned something from the foe he has just defeated and continue on. If the challenger walks away alive from the combat, then the defeated warrior was a weakling and unfit to serve Khorne. His broken and blasted remains will make a meagre sacrifice to the blood god, but no more. The ruinous powers often spend more time concerned with besting their rival gods in the great game played between them for power and influence in the realm of chaos, than trying to implement their carefully crafted plans upon the mortal world. The conflicting desires and ideologies of Nergal, Slaanesh and Tzeentch are so opposed that it becomes clear why these immense divine powers spend so much of their energies in conflict with each other. Khorne, however, has an understandably difficult relationship with the other major ruinous powers, in that his philosophy and nature is so different that the others find it difficult to understand him. The blood god loathes magic and those who wield it, for example, and yet all of the other powers are wielders of powerful sorcery by their very natures, as entities comprised of magical energy, and so this trait alone sets Khorne apart from his peers. Whilst Nergal is abhorrent to Khorne's methods, He is the one Chaos God that can empathize with his brother's plight. The Lord of Decay sits and waits for his diseases and the despair they create to overwhelm the mortal world, and, if it were his way, would wait for eons for his plans to come slowly to fruition. Nergal is quite happy for his followers to avoid direct combat, instead allowing them to simply spread disease and plague. To Khorne, this approach does not have the honour of bloody combat. Khorne revels in direct action, and the passive approach of Nergal is totally at odds with the blood god's very essence. Nergal is a god who believes that his goals will be achieved through careful planning and stewardship of his blessings, whereas Khorne only cares for immediate destruction. For his part, Tzeentch delights in baiting Khorne. The changer of ways is the most confusing, subtle and maddening of the ruinous powers. Khorne is not unintelligent, but he has no time for subtlety, and his rage tends to consume more complicated emotions like ambition and the hunger for knowledge. Tzeentch therefore plays tricks upon Khorne for his own amusement, which Khorne responds to in the only way he knows how, the destruction of all those in his way. The Changer of Ways is also the greater source of magic and patron of magic users amongst the Chaos Gods, and Khorne does not look kindly upon this fact. Tzeentch, in Khorne's estimation, is a coward cringing behind a wall of trickery and simple conjuring instead of having any real power. Khorne views Tzeentch as a weakling sustained only by the power of the ether. If his source of power were to diminish, then Khorne would raise his forces and crush the home of the Changer of Ways, the impossible fortress in the realm of the sorcerer. One might imagine that Slaanesh, being the prince of pleasure and pain, possesses the ideology closest to Khorne's. However, while no one can deny that Khorne's demonic and mortal legions cause unbelievable pain, Khorne does not actually aim to cause suffering for suffering's sake. Indeed, of all the major Chaos Gods, Slaanesh is the most diametrically opposed to Khorne as a patron of the arts and a lover of aesthetically pleasing objects. Slaanesh's focus is inward, acting on his followers through their taste for decadent pleasures. He ingratiates them slowly to his service, their taste for pleasure or pain becoming ever harder to satiate over time, and requiring more and more perverse acts in order that they might feel anything at all. Decadence begets perversion, which begets abomination, and eventually utter amoral depravity. It is this methodology that is alien and truly offensive to Khorne. The blood god has no time for pleasure or eroticism. Indeed, all emotions are wasteful to him, save for rage, hate, and a desire for vengeance. Slaanesh corrupts mortals from within, building on their inner thoughts and desires, while Khorne always builds from without, focusing on the pursuit of physical strength and power. Slaanesh would delight in a grotesquely obese follower gorging themselves upon expensive delicacies. But Khorne cares only for muscle and sinew to give strength in battle. Slaanesh lets his followers enjoy life to the fullest, fulfilling their most perverse desires. Khorne simply seeks to cause death. These two gods are constantly at war with one another, each believing that they have the upper hand, or can soon gain it in their endless struggle. It is to the constant relief of the people of the old world that these rivalries of the chaos gods have prevented them from remaining permanently united in pursuit of their common aim, that of destroying all existing mortal civilization. That just about wraps up this spotlight on my Khorne Chaos Army. Thanks very much for watching. Peace.